There is a plant in your yard right now, or in a neighbor's yard, or being sold in a 4-inch pot at the garden center down the street this weekend with a cheerful tag that says spreads beautifully, or naturalizes readily, or fills in fast. And that plant is going to cost someone years of labor to remove. Maybe you. Maybe the person who buys the house after you. Maybe the natural area 2 properties over that has no idea what's coming through the soil. The language on those tags is not lying exactly, but it is translating plant biology into marketing in a way that removes all the consequences from the description. Spreads beautifully means the rhizome network is already moving through your soil in every direction and will be in your neighbor's bed by next spring. Naturalizes readily means it self-seeds into every open soil surface within 30 feet, and the seedlings look like weeds until they're too established to pull without a shovel. Fills in fast means you will be managing the fill for as long as you own that property. I have made every mistake on this list, every single one. Some of them I made because I didn't know better. Some of them I made because I read the description, saw the warning, and thought I could manage it. I could not manage it. Nobody manages it. The plants that earn a spot on this list are not plants that spread a little too enthusiastically. They are plants that make decisions in your garden that you did not authorize, that reverse those decisions at enormous cost of time and effort, and that in a number of cases have been documented to escape into natural areas and displace native plant communities in ways that are ecologically significant and essentially irreversible. 15 plants. Some of them will surprise you because they are widely sold, widely recommended, and genuinely beautiful. That is exactly the problem. And I want to tell you right now that number 9 on this list is the one that I expect the most pushback on in the comments, because it has a devoted following among gardeners who genuinely love it and who have managed it successfully for years in their specific conditions, and who don't know yet what it does in different soil conditions, or what happens when a division gets passed to a neighbor with a different garden, or what it looks like in its 5th year when the rhizome network has had time to reach the places you weren't watching. Hold that thought until we get to 9. Before we start, drop a comment and tell me which plant on this list you already have in your garden, if you recognize one from the description before I name it. Tell me what state you're in and whether it's been manageable or whether it's already become a problem. I ask because the regional variation in how invasive some of these plants behave is real and significant, and knowing where this community is gardening helps me understand which warnings matter most for which people. Before the list, a framework for understanding why some perennials become problems that others don't, because the mechanism matters and most gardening content skips it. There are 3 distinct spread strategies that produce invasive behavior in garden perennials, and they are not equally difficult to manage. Rhizome spread, underground horizontal stems that produce new shoots at intervals, is the most common and ranges from manageable to essentially uncontrollable depending on the species, the soil conditions, and how long the plant has been established before you try to contain it. Self-seeding, producing viable seeds in quantities large enough to colonize every disturbed soil surface in the surrounding area, is often underestimated because it looks slow in year 1 and exponential by year 3 when every seed from 2 seasons ago is simultaneously establishing. Stolon spread, surface runners that root at nodes wherever they touch soil, is visible and theoretically manageable. But in practice, the rooted nodes are distributed across a large area before most gardeners realize what's happening. The plants on this list use one or more of these strategies with an effectiveness that exceeds what most gardeners are prepared to manage. And the specific strategy each plant uses determines what containment approach, if any, can actually work. The first plant on this list is one that appears on virtually every beginner gardening recommendation list, is sold in every garden center in the country, and has been responsible for more hours of frustrated extraction work in American home gardens than almost any other perennial. Lysimachia punctata, yellow Loosestrife, sometimes sold as garden Loosestrife or circle flower, produces upright stems covered in cheerful bright yellow flowers in early summer that are genuinely attractive and that explain completely why it sells so well. What the label does not explain is that it spreads by rhizome at a rate that in good garden soil, amended, moist, average fertility, can cover 4 to 6 feet of new ground per season. Each rhizome fragment left in the soil after removal generates a new plant. The removal process requires digging to a depth of 12 inches or more to capture the full root system, and in a bed with other established perennials, getting to that depth without destroying the neighboring plants is essentially impossible. Hardy in USDA zones 4 through 8. It is not on invasive species lists in most states because its primary damage is in garden beds rather than natural areas, though in moist riparian zones in parts of the Midwest, it has been documented escaping into disturbed natural areas. The correct response to finding this plant at a garden center is to put it back and walk to a different section. If you already have it, begin removal before it reaches its 3rd year in the ground, because by year 4, the rhizome network is large enough that a single season of removal will not be sufficient. Cut the stems to the ground repeatedly throughout the growing season to exhaust the root reserves. This takes 2 to 3 full seasons of consistent effort and is the most effective non-chemical approach to removal. The second plant is one where I need to separate carefully between 2 species that share a common name, because the distinction is the difference between a manageable garden plant and a genuine problem. Lythrum salicaria, purple Loosestrife, is not the same plant as Lythrum virgatum, which is the cultivated garden variety sold under names like Morden Pink or Dropmore Purple. The wild species, Lythrum salicaria, is federally listed as a noxious weed in the United States and is banned from sale in many states because it has colonized millions of acres of wetland across North America, displacing native vegetation and destroying wildlife habitat at a scale that is genuinely alarming. A single plant of Lythrum salicaria produces 2 to 3 million seeds per year. 2 to 3 million. Those seeds remain viable in soil for years and disperse via water, wind, and wildlife across significant distances. If you find this plant in your yard or nearby, removal is not optional from an ecological standpoint. It is something you are doing for the natural areas in your region. The cultivated garden varieties, Lythrum virgatum, have been marketed as sterile, but research from multiple university extension programs has documented that the sterile cultivars can hybridize with the wild species and produce fertile offspring. Several states have banned all Lythrum from sale regardless of the sterility claim. Check your state's invasive species list before planting any Lythrum. If it is on the list, do not plant it regardless of what the garden center tag says. The third plant is one I covered in the previous video in this series in a different context, and I want to revisit it here with more specific detail about the removal process because the general warning is not sufficient preparation for what actual removal involves. Hutuinia cordata chameleon, the plant with the striking green, red, yellow, and cream variegated foliage, spreads by rhizome in moist garden soil in zones 5 through 9 at a rate that most gardeners are not prepared for after the attractive first season performance. What makes removal specifically difficult is the depth and fragility of the rhizome system. The roots go down 12 to 18 inches in loose, amended soil. They are brittle. They break cleanly when you try to pull them. And every fragment generates a new plant. Digging a bed that contains established Hautunia to full rhizome depth, sifting the soil to remove fragments, and replanting typically takes a full weekend for a 10 square foot area and requires returning 2 to 3 times across the following season to remove plants from fragments missed in the initial excavation. I have seen this plant appear through cracks in patio paving 18 months after apparent removal from an adjacent bed. If you have it and you want it gone, the most realistic approach is covering the entire area with cardboard and 6 inches of wood chip mulch for 2 full growing seasons, which exhausts the root reserves through repeated suppressed resprouting without requiring complete excavation. It is slow, it works. There is no faster organic method that is consistently effective. The fourth plant is one that is currently being sold in garden centers across the country under its common name, without adequate disclosure of its behavior in American garden soils and the gap between its reputation in European cottage gardens, where it originates and where the climate moderates its spread somewhat, and its behavior in the moist, fertile soils of the American East and Midwest is significant. Egopodium podagraria variegatum, variegated bishop's weed, sometimes called snow on the mountain, produces attractive white-edged foliage that is genuinely ornamental in the spring and that spreads by rhizome into dense ground cover at a rate that in good soil covers multiple feet per season. It handles deep shade, it handles dry shade, it handles the root competition under mature trees that defeats most ground covers. The problem is that once it is established, it is one of the most difficult perennials to eradicate from a garden bed because the rhizome network is shallow enough to be disrupted by normal garden activity, meaning any digging, dividing, or planting in the same bed spreads rhizome fragments throughout the disturbed soil and generates new plants faster than the removal effort eliminates them. Hardy in zones 3 through 9. Invasive in natural areas in portions of the Northeast and Upper Midwest, where it has escaped from gardens into woodland edges. If you want the visual effect of white variegated ground cover in shade, Lamium maculatum, spotted dead nettle, provides similar ornamental foliage with controllable spread behavior and without the eradication problem. Number 5 is one that will be genuinely controversial in this list because it is a native North American plant, and the native plant movement has created an assumption in many gardening circles that native equals non-invasive. In a native plant's natural range and in ecological community context, this is generally true. In a garden bed with rich amended soil, adequate moisture, and no competition from the prairie plant community that naturally moderates its spread, the behavior can be completely different. Helianthus tuberosus, Jerusalem artichoke, is native to North America, produces edible tubers that have genuine nutritional and culinary value, and in garden soil with decent fertility spreads by underground tuber production at a rate that in 3 to 4 seasons can colonize a significant area of a garden bed. Hardy in zones 3 through 8. The tubers are brittle and fragment easily during any attempt at removal, and every fragment produces a new plant the following season. The plants grow 6 to 10 feet tall, shade out neighboring perennials, and the tuber network can penetrate several feet deep in loose soil. If you want to grow Jerusalem artichoke for the edible harvest, contain it. A raised bed with solid walls, surrounded by hardscape on all sides, is the only garden structure that reliably prevents spread. In open soil, without physical containment, it makes its own decisions about where it goes, and those decisions are not reversible without sustained multi-season effort. Number 6 is one where the warning I need to give is specifically regional, because this plant's invasive behavior varies dramatically by climate and the National Gardening Press rarely makes that regional distinction clearly enough. Fallopoeia japonica, Japanese knotweed. I covered in the previous video on gardening regrets, but the warning belongs here too and deserves more detail about the mechanism. The rhizome network grows to depths of 6 to 10 feet and extends laterally 10 to 20 feet per season in favorable conditions. Rhizome fragments as small as ½ an inch generate viable new plants. It has been documented growing through asphalt, through concrete foundations, through the walls of structures. It is listed as an invasive species in most American states and in many countries. It should not be planted under any circumstances. If it is present in your yard, if you purchased a property with it already established, contact your state's Department of Agriculture or Cooperative Extension Service for current best practice removal guidance, because the methods for effective control have been refined significantly in the last decade, and the most current guidance from extension professionals in your specific state is more useful than any general advice I can give. The reason I include it here, despite having mentioned it in the previous video, is that it continues to appear at plant sales and informal exchanges because people who have it in their yards give away what they think are divisions of other plants and inadvertently include rhizome fragments in the soil. Verify the identity of anything you receive from informal plant exchanges. This is not an overcautious recommendation. Somewhere around plant 6 is usually where this type of video loses people who are gardening in genuinely difficult conditions. Compacted soil, deep shade, dry areas where almost nothing grows, because several plants on this list are the ones that succeed in those difficult conditions. And the warning to avoid them feels like taking away the only solution available. I want to address that directly before we continue. If you've been watching this channel and you're not subscribed, the follow-up to this video is going to cover the specific non-invasive alternatives for each of the 15 plants on this list, matched by growth condition, matched by visual character, giving you what these plants offer without what they do. Subscribe now and turn the bell on. That video is being built around the exact conditions, shade, drought, poor soil, slopes, that make invasive plants tempting in the first place, and it will not reach you through YouTube's suggested content reliably if you're not subscribed. Hit the button. Number 7 is a plant that appears on native plant lists, pollinator garden recommendations, and butterfly garden guides across the country, and whose invasive behavior in garden contexts is genuinely underreported because the ecological benefits are real and the gardening community has been reluctant to complicate the narrative. Asclepias syriaca, common milkweed, is a critical host plant for monarch butterfly larvae. That is not in dispute and is not a reason to minimize the warning. It is also a plant that spreads by rhizome through underground runners that extend multiple feet per season and produces seeds on wind-dispersed silks that travel significant distances and germinate in every disturbed soil surface they land on. In a large naturalized area, a meadow garden, or a site where spread is desirable, common milkweed is the correct plant and the correct choice. In a mixed perennial border, a kitchen garden, or a contained bed adjacent to a lawn or natural area, the spread management requirement is significant and ongoing. The alternative that provides monarch habitat without the containment challenge is Asclepias tuberosa, butterfly weed, which grows from a deep taproot rather than a spreading rhizome system, does not produce the same aggressive vegetative spread, self-seeds at a moderate rather than prolific rate, and provides the same monarch caterpillar host plant function. Hardy in zones 3 through 9. If supporting monarchs is your goal, butterfly weed achieves it without the management commitment that common milkweed requires in a garden context. Number 8 is one that is currently experiencing a significant surge in popularity due to its appearance in cut flower gardening content, wildflower meadow aesthetics, and cottage garden design trends, and whose behavior in those contexts looks manageable and beautiful and does not reveal the full picture until the plant has been in the ground for 3 seasons. Tanacetum vulgar, common tansy, produces bright yellow button-like flowers on tall stems in late summer that are genuinely attractive in the wild garden aesthetic, and it is listed as an invasive species in multiple American states because it spreads by both aggressive rhizome expansion and prolific self-seeding simultaneously. It contains thujone, a compound toxic to humans and livestock in significant doses, which means it should not be grown where children or animals have access to it. Hardy in zones 3 through 9. It handles poor soil, drought, and neglect with the same ease that makes genuinely useful plants valuable. And it spreads in those conditions rather than being moderated by them the way some aggressive plants are. If you are seeing it recommended in cut flower gardening content, the flowers do dry beautifully and the stems are long. Those qualities do not change the behavior in your garden bed. Check your state invasive species list before planting. Number 9. The one I told you at the beginning of this video would generate pushback. And I want to explain my reasoning carefully because the gardening community genuinely loves this plant, and the love is earned by real performance in many garden contexts. Physalis alkakengi, Chinese lantern, produces those iconic orange papery pods in fall that appear in dried arrangements, seasonal displays, and autumn decorating content across the gardening internet. The pods are genuinely beautiful. The plant itself spreads by underground rhizome at a rate that in good garden soil reaches 4 to 6 feet per season, and the combination of rhizome spread and prolific self-seeding from those pods. Each pod contains viable seeds, and the pods disperse widely when they dry and disintegrate, creates a colonization pattern that in 3 to 4 seasons can occupy a large portion of a garden bed and begin appearing in adjacent lawn and neighboring properties. Hardy in zones 3 through 8. The gardeners who have managed it successfully for years are typically growing it in contained conditions, surrounded by hardscape, in a dedicated cutting garden with regular intervention, or in soil conditions that naturally moderate the spread. The gardeners who discover the problem are the ones who planted it in open beds adjacent to other perennials or in soil conditions favorable to rapid spread and discovered too late how far it had traveled. If you want the lantern pods for seasonal decoration, grow it in a large container sunk into the ground with the rim above soil level, or in a raised bed with solid walls. In those conditions, the spread is contained, and the visual payoff is real. In open garden soil, the pods are not worth what the plant costs you in management over a decade. I expect comments disagreeing with this, and I welcome them, because the regional and condition-specific variation in this plant's behavior is exactly the kind of information that makes this community useful. Number 10 is one that I have to address with specific care because the cultivated garden varieties and the wild species have been conflated in gardening content in a way that has caused real confusion about the risk level. Convallaria majalis, lily of the valley, is one of the most beloved spring-flowering plants in American gardens, with fragrant white bell-shaped flowers in April and May that have been grown in home gardens for generations. It spreads by rhizome into a dense colony that handles deep shade, dry shade, and the root competition under mature trees that defeats most other ground covers. In those specific conditions, for gardeners who want a shade ground cover that they are comfortable managing over time, it is a legitimate choice with acknowledged trade-offs. The problems arise when it is planted in open beds adjacent to other perennials, where the rhizome network moves through neighboring plants' root systems and is essentially impossible to remove without disturbing the entire planting. And when it escapes into natural woodland areas, which it has documented done in parts of the Northeast, Upper Midwest, and Pacific Northwest, it displaces native spring ephemeral wildflowers, including trillium, bloodroot, and jack-in-the-pulpit, that cannot compete with its dense ground-level colonization, hardy in zones 2 through 7. All parts are toxic to humans and animals if ingested. Planted with full awareness that it will spread. That removal from a mixed border is very difficult once established, and that in regions where it is documented as invasive in natural areas, the ecological responsibility question is worth taking seriously before you plant. Number 11 is one that generates genuine surprise when it appears on lists like this because its reputation is so thoroughly positive in American gardening culture that most people have never considered its behavior. From this angle, Hemerocallis fulva, the orange ditch lily, the wild daylily that grows along roadsides across North America, is not the same plant as the cultivated daylily hybrids I have recommended in earlier videos in this series. The distinction matters enormously. Hemerocallis fulva is a triploid that does not produce viable seed, but spreads by tuberous root division at a rate that in good garden soil can be significantly aggressive, crowding out neighboring plants through root competition rather than through visible spread. It is naturalized across North America to the point of appearing native and has displaced native vegetation in disturbed areas in documented cases. The cultivated hybrid daylilies, Stella d'Oro, Happy Returns, pardon me, are different plants with generally manageable spread behavior. The orange ditch lily, sold sometimes as Hemerocallis fulva, or simply as orange daylily, or collected from roadsides, is the one that earns a place on this list. If someone offers you a division from an orange daylily growing in a ditch or a field, the polite thing is to decline. Number 12 is a plant that has moved through the American gardening community in the last decade faster than any other through the propagation of social media cottage garden and prairie garden aesthetics, and whose behavior in American garden soils is only now becoming widely documented because most of the gardens where it was planted 5 years ago have had enough time to reveal the consequences. Persicaria amplexicaulis, mountain fleece red bistort, produces tall, upright spikes of small, bright red or pink flowers over a long season from midsummer through fall. And in those flower images, it looks exactly like the kind of mid to late season color that every garden needs. Hardy in zones 4 through 8. In the moist, cool conditions of the UK where most of the cottage garden content featuring this plant originates, it is a well-behaved large perennial with manageable spread. In the fertile, moisture-retentive soils of the American East and Upper Midwest, the rhizome spread is significantly more aggressive than the UK performance data suggests, and multiple American extension programs have begun issuing advisories about its behavior in regional soil conditions. This is a case where the geographic origin of the gardening content, overwhelmingly British for this plant, creates a misleading picture of what the plant does in American gardens. Watch specifically for this pattern. A plant that is widely recommended in British gardening content, looks beautiful in British garden photography, and has not been grown in American conditions long enough to have a reliable American performance record. The absence of American complaints about a plant is sometimes evidence that nobody has grown it here long enough to know what it does. Number 13 is one that belongs on this list specifically because of what happens when it escapes the garden, rather than what it does within it, and because the scale of that ecological impact is large enough to warrant more serious treatment than it typically receives in mainstream gardening content. Lythrum salicaria was the second plant on this list. This is its relative in a different family with a different mechanism, but a similarly significant ecological footprint. Phalaris arundinacea, reed canary grass, including the ornamental cultivar picta that I mentioned in the previous video, has naturalized across wetland areas of North America and is considered one of the most damaging invasive plants in American freshwater wetland ecosystems by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and multiple state wildlife agencies. The ornamental striped variety, Phalaris arundinacea picta, ribbon grass, is a legal garden plant in most states and is sold widely, but it can revert to the more aggressive green form through genetic instability. And both forms produce viable seed that disperses into adjacent wetland areas. If your property is adjacent to or drains into a wetland, stream, pond, or any natural water feature, this plant represents a genuine ecological risk that the garden center tag is not going to tell you about. Hardy in zones 4 through 9. The visual effect of silver-striped ornamental grass in a garden bed is achievable with Calamagrostis x acutiflora Carl Forster, recommended in earlier videos in this series, without any wetland escape risk. Number 14 is the last plant on this list that is invasive primarily through self-seeding rather than rhizome spread, and the specific reason it belongs here rather than in a category of merely enthusiastic self-seeders is the quantity and viability of the seeds it produces, combined with the difficulty of removing established plants. Verbascum thapsus, common mullein, produces a tall central spike covered in yellow flowers in its second year, is technically a biennial rather than a perennial, and is listed as a noxious weed in several states because the seed bank it establishes in garden soil persists for decades. A single mullein plant produces up to 180,000 seeds per flowering spike. Those seeds remain viable in soil for 70 to 100 years. This is not a plant that spreads and you pull and it's gone. This is a plant that establishes a seed reserve in your garden soil that will continue producing new plants for the rest of your time on that property and the time of the people who come after you. The ornamental verbascum cultivars sold in garden centers, the hybrid garden mulleins in pink, purple, and white, are different plants with different seed viability, and most of them are the legitimate choice if you want that vertical flower form. The wild species, which occasionally appears at native plant sales or is collected from roadsides, is the one to avoid. Number 15 closes this list with the plant that has probably generated more extraction labor in American home gardens over the last 30 years than any other single species on this list, and whose popularity shows no signs of decreasing, despite the consequences being widely documented and widely experienced by the people who have grown it. Agopodium podagraria, bishop's weed, appeared earlier on this list in its variegated form. The solid green species deserves its own entry because it is more aggressive than the variegated cultivar and is listed as invasive in multiple northeastern states, where it has escaped from gardens into woodland areas. Hardy in zones 3 through 9, spreads by shallow rhizome at a rate of several feet per season in average garden soil. Handles deep shade, dry shade, root competition, poor soil, and essentially every difficult garden condition that makes other ground covers fail. That combination of adaptability and aggressiveness makes it the plant that solves every problem you have in year 1 and creates a larger problem than all of them combined by year 4. Removal requires excavating the entire planting area to full rhizome depth, sifting the soil for fragments, and returning repeatedly across 2 to 3 growing seasons to remove regenerating plants from missed fragments. The physical containment approach, 6 inches of cardboard covered by 6 inches of wood chip mulch maintained for 2 full growing seasons, is the most realistic non-chemical removal method. If a neighbor or a well-meaning family member offers you a division of bishop's weed, the answer is no, and explaining why is worth the brief awkwardness of the conversation. Here is how to use this list in a way that is actually practical rather than just cautionary. The 15 plants here fall into 2 distinct categories that require different responses. The first category, yellow Loosestrife, variegated bishop's weed, lily of the valley, Chinese lantern, and the ornamental daylilies wild relative are plants that cause primarily garden-scale problems, meaning the damage is real and the labor is significant, but the ecological consequences are largely contained to your property and immediate neighbors. If you have these in your garden and you like them, and you have the management capacity to contain them, that is a considered choice you are entitled to make with full information. The second category, purple Loosestrife, Japanese knotweed, ribbon grass adjacent to wetlands, common milkweed in formal borders, and common tansy, are plants where the damage extends beyond your garden into natural ecosystems in ways that affect species and communities that have no capacity to respond. These are not plants where individual management capacity is the relevant variable. These are plants where the question is whether your garden should be a source of propagation pressure on natural areas that are already under significant stress. That is a harder question than, can I manage this in my beds? And I think it deserves to be asked directly. Two things that are more useful than most of what gets said about invasive plants in gardening content. The first, your state's invasive species list is a specific, maintained, legally relevant document that reflects current ecological conditions in your region, and it is available for free through your state's Department of Agriculture or Cooperative Extension Service website. It is more accurate and more regionally specific than any national gardening article, any YouTube video including this one, and any garden center tag. Check it before you plant anything whose description includes words like vigorous, spreads readily, or naturalizes. The second, the most effective containment strategy for any spreading perennial before you plant it is physical root barrier. Solid root barrier material, available at garden supply stores, installed vertically to a depth of 12 to 18 inches and with the rim extending 2 inches above soil level, prevents rhizome escape from a contained area more reliably than any other non-chemical approach. It does not prevent seed dispersal, so for plants that spread by both rhizome and seed, it is a partial solution. But for rhizome-only spreaders like lily of the valley, or catmint in favorable conditions, a properly installed root barrier, installed before planting, changes a potentially uncontrollable plant into a genuinely manageable one. I want to say something before this video ends that I think is worth saying in the context of a warning list specifically. Every plant on this list exists in someone's garden right now, where it is beautiful, manageable, and deeply loved. The goal of this video is not to make anyone feel bad about what they're growing. It is to give you information that the garden center display and the gardening magazine and the social media post did not include. The full picture of what these plants do over time in different conditions to different garden situations. That is the only thing this channel is trying to do in this video and in every other one. Give you the complete information and let you make your own decision. If you want to keep getting that kind of content every week, subscribe right now and hit the bell, not as a favor to me, but because YouTube will not consistently deliver it to you without that signal. And the next video in this series covers the non-invasive alternatives for every single plant on this list, matched by condition and visual character, so that nothing on this list leaves you without a solution. Subscribe now so that video reaches you when it publishes. And before you close this, drop one comment with this specific information. Which plant on this list are you already growing? What state are you in? And whether you have found it manageable, or whether it has already become a problem you are dealing with. That information from this community, across all the different zones and soil conditions represented here, is genuinely the most useful data I can get. Drop it below. Now go check your beds.